Expert Dojo. Welcome back. We are back for another week of talking about investment, growth, and how to build out your unicorn. That's it. That's all we talk about. Today, we're going to do a focus on gaming, esports, and how do we actually scale that particular company. But really, it's not just about scaling that particular company. It's just we have a phenomenal entrepreneur who's going to come on, and John is going to take us through how he scaled his company up from zero users using the community to taking it up to over 500,000 users. So it's a phenomenal story. And I think at the end of the day, I do these live streams every week for 30 minutes so I can help share the things that are working with really phenomenal entrepreneurs or phenomenal experts in the space who are focused entirely on building customers. That's it. And because, as I say every single week, if you're growing, you're going to get lots of investors. If you're not growing, you're going to spend your entire life begging for investors and you will get zero investors. And that's exactly how this market is right now. I personally love the community. I'm on a panel this week, and I don't normally look at the questions, but I glanced at these questions. And one of the questions said, what is the thing that you do to get the very best deal flow in the world? And there was lots of answers under there, which is, do you speak to other VCs? Do you speak to the community? Blah, 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 blah. But the thing I do is I just build up personal brand. That's it. I spend all of my time working on building personal brand. The more people who like, know, and respect, then those people are going to come to me. The people who don't like me, that's fine. They shouldn't come to me, right? That was the right choice for them. But by building a personal brand, you can do it. So building a personal brand is very much adjacent to building up community, which is very adjacent to building a product that your customer really likes and respects. So we're going to focus a lot on that today. So without further ado, let me bring John in.
Howdy. Good to
Man,
see you
your
again.
moustache looks better every time.
Oh yeah, I'm working on it now that I'm a Texan.
Every time you're rocking it.
Mhm.
You're
So good to
rocking it.
see you.
You're looking good, my friend. I know. I haven't seen you in a little while. I was bantering backwards and forwards with your wonderful co-founder, who's doing
Uh,
all kinds of things these days. But
mhm.
it's great to talk to you. So, do you mind, John? We had the phenomenal pleasure of being able to invest into this incredible company. I will tell you that, like, the thing that impressed me about it very much at the beginning was the user growth that had happened prior to any investment. And I remember very well in the early days, John and I were having the conversation, and John's like, we just built a great community around something that they really needed. That's really what we did. And it seems so simple, but it's actually so incredibly difficult if you intentionally try and go and do that. So I definitely want to dig in here. But talk to us just a little bit about the company, a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background. And then I want to dig into growth hacking and not only what you've done to take you to where you are today, but also then what's that piece like in the middle where you almost have to redefine the product to move from
Mhm.
horizon one to horizon three to decide, okay, now that we've done this, actually, everything that first piece before wasn't necessarily to build a unicorn. It's almost a trial run so we can see what the real product looks like in the future. So, loads to unpack, but share with the world who you are, my friend.
Yeah, so GameTree is essentially the best place for gamers to meet each other generally. I started it because after college, moved to a new city, didn't know people, would play out games online by myself, which I used to play with friends more, and it
Yeah.
just started to feel more toxic, more lonely. And thought like, why aren't there good apps for connecting gamers? Not just like based on your age, sex, location, but going deeper on your personality, your tastes, your values, your play style. And nobody's really gone deeply on that. There's a big difference between like somebody you're likely to be friends with and just a random person. So
Yeah.
GameTree was essentially made to help all these gamers. I have a background in personality psychology as well, so that's been pretty helpful, as well as diving in many thousands of hours deeper into that rabbit hole. Moved to Ukraine to start it up to get it off the ground. That was a big growth hack. Was just the low cost of living, low cost of engineers, low cost to acquire early users that give feedback. I'd say one of the most important things is the users are sort of like your guide to what the perfect shape is for a business. It's like Leonardo da Vinci said that inside every stone is a perfect statue, but it's the job of the sculptor to uncover it. And in a way, the user feedback is kind of like, what is the shape of the perfect structure? What is the perfect form? It's easy for us to say, what do we think is right? But for example, in GameTree, we had users vote, and there were two things tied for the first place. One of them is just even deeper curation, which we already do the deepest, but that doesn't really help our growth, retention, monetization, and we're already ahead of there. The other one was basically helping coordinate gameplay. People are busy, it's awkward to reach out. You have all these friends lists of people who you add, and then eventually you forget who they are, and there's no way to stay in touch. So we tried solving this and didn't do that great of a job. Maybe 10% of the users would use this gameplay coordination on GameTree. And it wasn't until after a while realizing that it was a more challenging climb than it should be. And that it's a trope in tech not to try to monetize friendship building. And that it the best we could do in this model looked to be like building secretly a dating app that also does worse matching, and then just having like a crappy app. But if we want to build something really big, we'd have to do something different. And remembering that the LFG, or looking for group, is something the users really wanted, that's
Yeah,
something that we
just
ended up
go back.
pivoting
Just
towards.
do me a favor, just because I obviously know this whole story, but I just want to make sure people follow it. Like, you went to Ukraine, you went there with your co-founder. Your co-founder is another incredible entrepreneur, and she is Ukrainian, which helps, right? And
Hmm.
so you immediately got in with the local market. You immediately got. So I think first lesson from this whole thing is, like, make sure you know what you're doing and who you're doing it with, right? And so what was really smart by what John did was, like, his partner is incredibly deep in the Ukrainian development space, or development and defense space, which is kind of very similar, because lots of very geeky people who are focused on the technology, which in the case of her ended up being the technology that protected the country. But that's very much adjacent to just incredible developers building amazing product. So you went there in the knowledge that you could build for a tenth of the price with developers who are as good, if not better, because you had the skills to be able to do that.
Exactly. I'd originally moved to San Francisco, which turned out to be one of the worst places to do a tech startup, at least at the early
Yeah.
stage, because it's expensive to live. You're competing against Meta and stuff for like employees. You're competing against like everybody for attention. So one of the things is that you can be a bigger fish in a smaller sea and then move back to a bigger sea later, which you don't have to like pick a bigger sea to start out in. If you're the small fish, it's actually a worse position to be in more than not. With Dana, she's like on a personality psychology level also very different from me. And you don't want somebody like you. You don't want somebody to agree with you or have the same strengths and weaknesses. You want somebody who's going to challenge you and argue with you and see different sides of things. And then through arguing about something, come out with the real answer.
Yeah, and
And then also her being Ukrainian is helpful.
yeah, and you really completed each other. And again, that's the second lesson for everyone here is, like, everything in startup is about skill gapping. It's not about how good you are at a particular thing. It's about, there's like 4 or 5 skills at each stage of build and grow and scale that are vital. And without the 4 skills, you're dead. Even if you have one or two and you don't have the other one. So if you've got great business outreach, but you have terrible logistics, if you have great hiring, but you have awful creativity, if you have great product, but you've awful outreach, like, you're dead. And so the idea is, how do you take those 3 or 4 incredibly important pieces to be successful at that stage and make sure that you have it? So you were really smart by getting Dana. And when you started to get your initial users, when you and I first met, you had already gained a lot of users and a lot of traction over in the Ukraine. I think with a lot of Ukrainian users, but also a lot of users around Europe. Talk to me about how you both built this out, and then after you built it out, how you managed to get these users to come on to what would have been a pretty scrappy first iteration, and how you got them to stay there.
Yeah, so generally the first versions of things tend to suck. And that's part of the like fail fast, fail forward is be learning,
Yeah,
iterating, shipping. Don't build too much because it might not be what people want. So the
yeah,
first two versions of Game Tree were pretty bad. We're actually on the fourth version now, where we started to scale and have, and also just learned more after the third version that was run for a bit. Uh, essentially it's about like looking at the metrics and interviewing users using the product and seeing like what works and what doesn't. For example, in the first version, we thought it would be a clever way to overcome the chicken and egg cold start problem of a social network, because this is a very hard company to start. You need lots of people using it, by just giving people their best match every day, just one match, and then every day they can come back and they have another match. In reality, what happened is they'd sign up, they'd get their one match, and they'd be like, oh, that's it, and then they just leave. So that actually ended up
Yeah.
being like differences between our thoughts and expectations. So it's good that we just launched that quickly so that we could just remove that barrier very quickly. Being
Yeah.
in Ukraine was helpful because the you want to do things that don't scale at first. When you're scaling, you have to do things that scale. But at the beginning, it's like asking friends to sign up, guerrilla marketing, posting in comments and Reddits and like Discords. It's going to conferences, especially in Ukraine. It's a lot cheaper. Also, getting local users with advertising was way cheaper to get feedback, because it's like pennies on the dollar compared to San Francisco. But feedback is feedback. Like the Ukrainians are pretty similar to Americans, where they're going to have the same hangups and opinions and things. So instead of us wasting so much money, we were able to learn and iterate and improve quickly. And then as the product became good, it just started to naturally grow around the rest of the world.
Excellent. Tell me a little bit more about how you built up the users.
So at first it was just like scrappy guerrilla stuff. In Ukraine, I hired a couple of people to help with marketing. That would just be like writing blog posts, posting in different places. We do our own like videos. We were just basically trying everything. But in addition to that, lower ad costs helped a lot, as well as being able to go to conferences. For example, in Ukraine, to have a booth at a conference could be like $100 or $200, but if you go to one in America, it's like thousands of dollars. So when you're a startup, you're resource poor, but like creativity, equity, like energy rich. So you really want to go in places where you can really leverage the resources to get the most results relative to the bigger businesses.
Fantastic. And then, so on top of that, though, you must have done something a little bit more special than just that, because you didn't really have any money to put into paid advertising. And you're kind of scrappily working your way towards building a product, working all of the hours of the day then. And conferences are good, but I mean, how do you get to so many users just by doing that?
Yeah, part of it is a lot of Google. It's that we were early on a problem that's big and growing. Not only is gaming getting much bigger, but also loneliness has been increasing. So just by being hyper focused on a solution like that, then we became number one on Google, the app stores for find gamers, find gamer friends, find people to play with. So as we got better ratings and people liked the app more, it started to organically grow quite a bit. And then later on, in like the second phase, after we raised a proper investment round and such, we started to invest more proactively into search engine optimization, different keywords research. But a lot of it is like switched off from paid ads and more towards organic. And now with the next iteration, we finally hit onto something that's like a big need and a creative way to solve something that people haven't been able to figure out yet. And then we expect that to really become like the next tier, which is the more heavily exponential growth with a lot
I,
more
I, I I love that. And
selfish
I want to
reasons
get
to refer.
I want to get to that, but I just want to stick with the CEO for a SEO for a moment, because I haven't personally spoken about SEO in a long time. And if I ask myself why haven't I really spoken about it, I think it's because I thought it was dead. Like I thought there was no way to get any SEO anymore. But and I know yours is going back a few years. Like, is it dead today? Should founders be spending time on SEO? And maybe some of the specific tactics that you used would be super helpful.
Yeah, I'd say it really depends. It depends like how specific you are. Like if you like the world's huge. There's 7 billion people. So if you do have good SEO, it's incredible. But it really depends how niche you are and the kinds of terms you're targeting. Like if you have something where there's bigger companies doing something very similar, you're not going to stand out. But when starting GameTree and finding gamer friends, it was a very small niche. So that was able to help us to grow and to become the top company in the space. Other startups have come and gone since. But now that we're in that position, we have tons of users signing up, we have tons of data, and that allows us to leverage that in different areas. And again, that's where a pivot now that we couldn't have gotten to if we tried to approach it directly. We wouldn't have had the user flow to help with on-demand gameplay coordination, but it was sort of like a good like 1-2 step that got us to this position now where we're able to do something that really does scale like to the next level.
Okay, and then so did you literally just like put your name on in lots of areas? Did you do lots of blogs? Did you do lots of
Yeah.
pure so and I'm only pushing you on this because I think what one of the things that folks get from this a lot of the time is not only just the inspiration of seeing startups growing, but it's also to be able to say, okay, I haven't tried this before. Let me try it. And I haven't spoken about SEO in a long time. So if you go back to those heady days and you think, okay, what were the specific things I did? What would you list out?
I think it was like a little bit of everything. Like it was conferences, it was a little bit of advertising, it was creating blog posts and guerrilla marketing. It was just a little bit of everything combined until we got enough feedback and traction that we were able to iterate the product and for it to then naturally grow organically. For example, with blog posts, gaming is a big and it's also a growing space. And there's like a huge amount of space to talk about things. And us being gamers, we could write about some like strategy or how to beat like what's popular in the game right now, for example. And if that gets people's foot in the door, that's great. And we try to choose topics that are somehow related to finding gamer friends. There's also just big problems and needs that people have that are tangential to finding gamer friends. For example, we discovered that toxicity is the other side of the coin, where there's a big toxicity problem. And part of that's because people are not only playing with strangers, but you're also playing less with friends and communities. When you're with friends and communities, you can like trash talk if you're a trash talker and find the right community and they know you don't mean it. Or if you don't like that kind of stuff, you're in a different community. But when you mix everybody together, everybody's just stepping on each other's toes and nobody's trying to be toxic, or not nobody, but like the vast majority of people actually aren't toxic. It's
Yeah.
just the wrong people playing together. And we seem to be the only people that understand this. The only tools the industry uses are muting and banning. It's actually a curation problem where it's the wrong people playing together and not enough friends and communities playing together.
I love this. And then, so as far as the next move, is the next move to become Twitch, or is it to be acquired by Twitch and become just a very valuable part of how they curate their ecosystem? Because what we're seeing now, it's super interesting. Even if I watch Twitch and I'm also watching at the same time the hottest things that are happening within the influencer spaces, we're sort of course, seeing, in real life, IRL is becoming huge, and Twitch are embracing IRL as almost as if it's a video game where these folks are going into it. So I would love to understand, like, this world of, as you when going through your Horizon One, and you were saying we had it with okay product, which is the absolute honest thing to say. Everybody is in that place. The very brilliant entrepreneurs realize it so they can build that Horizon 3 billion product. As you were going through that phase, what are the things that you've learned, and where has it taken you to for where the product goes next?
Yes, so originally it was meant for discovery, not just friends. Friends is a stepping stone, but helping discover games, news, events, things like that, because the world's getting bigger and bigger, and the bigger the world gets, the more important curation becomes. This is especially true now with AI, where there's so much slop out there that it's more important than ever to have a source that you trust and also to be able to curate that. And at GameTree, we collect an enormous amount of user data. The world's biggest gaming news network reached out to acquire us, saying they think we have actually the most user data out of any companies in the gaming industry, because people share this data. One, we're a public benefit corporation, so we're a bit more trustworthy, but also they know that it helps them to find the right players. Like you could have some little kid screaming at you, telling you to kill yourself, or you could have your next best gaming friend. And by sharing about yourself and your play styles and values, then that's gonna give users a selfish reason to share information and feel good about it. When it comes to Twitch, it's more Discord that we're moving in the direction of. But as right now we're focusing on getting to like a viral scalability and retention. Now that we have a funnel of capturing users and helping them find friends, gathering data, getting the contact information, we've purposely not been trying to retain them because we've been building up the Discord bot now, which is essentially a solution to help these guys not only play together, but like better stay in touch without as much effort. We noticed that more important than actually finding gamer friends is actually staying in touch with people and remembering
Yeah.
people who you know. It's right now the common thing is you get home, you're tired, you just click instant queue matchmaking, and you're just in with a bunch of strangers. And that was a great innovation in that it got us to like the dopamine faster. But what happened over time is our relationships started to deteriorate. You're not playing with friends, you're not going to servers, you're just thrown in with random people all the time, which starts to make gaming actually ultimately less fun and hollows out a lot of the meaningfulness of gaming, where it can be used as a tool to like stay in touch with friends and meet people. So what our bot does is it accompanies our GameTree Discord server, and we're swifting to be a Discord primarily focused thing first, where the app is actually serving as a service to Discord, where you can manage your friends list, a universal gamer profile, a games list. And now whenever you launch a game, it says, hey, do you want to play with people? You click a button and invites all your friends who are online who play that game and fills the extra
Cool.
spots with people you're predicted to like. And so without even having to like lose all these usernames of people that we add and we forget who they are over the years, like at some point in time, they were very important, but the vast majority of cases, even people working in the gaming industry just play by themselves because they forget who all these people were. But then once we have this data and the scale, then it's can act as universal login. We can work with Twitch, for example, curating the creators, curating game recommendations, things like that. Yeah, there's a bunch of questions here. Should I answer some of these?
No, we'll get to them in a minute. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. It's good because I think going through. Don't worry, I see all the questions. I just think going from Horizon 1 to Horizon 3 is incredibly important, and how you actually take the company from what it was before to where it goes to. Like, what does that jump look like right now? You've raised money, but obviously you're going to go through more raises in the future. Just take us through that, and then don't worry, I'll bring in the questions just as
Yeah,
they're
so
relevant.
it's challenging because as entrepreneurs, we usually suffer from whatever it is that's missing, like more than other people. Like we feel it harder, and that's what motivates us to go through all the risk and challenge of building a startup. Part of that is great because it gives us the willpower to be charismatic and to ride the roller coasters. But on the other hand, it gives us a bit more tunnel vision. And the longer we work at it, the more that tunnel vision becomes a thing. With finding gamer friends, that seemed like, okay, that's a big need. It provides massive value. People have translated the app into a bunch of languages. We get all these love notes about how they were like depressed and now they have the lives they always wanted. But that doesn't necessarily translate into growth, retention, and monetization. And so even though we raised funds, we were getting signups, people like the product, it wasn't enough. And that's also why if you look around, there aren't really any friend finding apps in the world, is that people just tend not to really pay for that. And usually you want something more long-term taxable. So it was a big struggle, and it was actually getting close to like starting to want to give up because we had tried so many different ways to capture the users and funnel them into different uses. It's like we built a really good wheel, but we didn't have a car to go with it. And that's when moving towards Discord made sense, where we knew that LFG was a massive problem. It wasn't just meeting people, it was coordinating gameplay and staying in touch, and that the place that people actually go to for that is Discord. But Discord isn't actually that good as
And
a
that's
social
so
network.
clever. That's so clever because what you're doing is you're building frictionless. Look, I'll bring one of the questions up, but you're bringing
Yeah.
frictionless innovation in, right? And so, I am such a huge fan of like not trying to fuck with disruption. I think disruption is so hard. You're trying to change people's behaviors. You're trying to bring them from another place. Like we could argue that Uber or Lyft was a success, but I would kind of say it costs Lyft $30 billion to become a company worth $30 billion. So yeah,
Mhm.
God bless them. They changed behaviors, but to what cost? And so in your case, the fact that you're leaning into where people are used to is great. So maybe speak to the technical challenges that actually just came with that.
So technically, it actually wasn't that challenging because Discord is designed to have tools and bots built on top of it. So we were resistant to it at first because traditional startup mentality is get people to visit your app and spend as long there as often as possible. But if they're actually still engaged in the GameTree ecosystem retaining, it's still the same GameTree database. They're still in our ecosystem. So if they're active in Discord versus active in GameTree, it makes no difference. When we tried to solve LFG before, we did it from Discord, and like Brian just said, it was like you just said, it was the challenge of making new habits and innovation and not being as easy as possible. And it was only getting near a rock bottom that we're like, wait a second, like we kind of had this idea before, but didn't take it as seriously. But really, that could be the key that unlocks everything. And so it's so much easier to create a habit when you have the ability to meet them where they're at, when it takes less energy, when you can send them a push notification at just the right time, when they have just the right intent, and then give them rewards immediately. With AI, right now it's on our server. For example, looking at all the data, we've created millions of connections at this point. So we know based on your personal tastes and values, like who gets along and how to weight things. But when it comes to Discord, we're able to just use our app and our database as an API, so we can just talk back and forth. Another cool thing that we have planned for the Discord GameTree bot, it's essentially a server that also has a bot that you can privately message or hang out in the server, is to actually make that your AI personal assistant for gaming. Combined with doing an Overwolf desktop app, we'll be able to look at the gameplay. You can have it optionally join your calls, and then it can kind of give feedback on like how you're getting along with people, how you're doing. If there's children, it can kind of be a nanny bot. If there's like toxicity or grooming going on, you could ask it for personal game recommendations. Like, Brian, if you and I want to play together, it'd be like, what's a game that both of us own that we'd both like playing together? To be able to kind of have your gaming life centralized in a place where it can sort of passively learn about you without having to manually give a bunch of information.
Yeah, I want to answer this because it's a great question, but it's an incorrect thought process. This is not a pivot. A pivot doesn't exist. There are no pivots. There are only people who listen to their customers and and entrepreneurs who don't listen to their customers. That's all there is. Like, I can't think of a company that has ever been invented that's good, that started here and built a product which is the same, but just to more people and better. Like, I can't think of any. Uber didn't start as Uber. Uber started as limousines with a bunch of dudes in black coats looking like Reservoir Dogs. And nobody's going to get that. That's like an old joke. But they were a bunch of dudes wearing black ties, white shirts, and black shoots with a bunch of limousines. Was it a pivot to create a decentralized world? It's not. Like, what happens is this: the only objective of a Horizon 1 product is to understand deeply what is the most transformative thing that you can do with your customer that's going to allow you to scale the fastest. That's it, period. That's what your first $1 million or first $1.5 million is for. Now you have to build something that's actually going to be able to bring in $10 million a month in revenue. So it's not a pivot, it's evolving your product so you can get more users and grow faster. And I think the more pertinent question becomes this question here, which is, what metrics matter most for you in the next 6 to 12 months? Because if the metrics that matter, and I'm going to let you speak to this in a moment, John, but like, if the metrics that matter is actually by us evolving our product from here to here means that we can grow at 200%, then yeah, great. It's a very difficult conversation with investors to tell them that you're right on track for building a unicorn. Comments?
Yeah, going back to the analogy before about there's a perfect shape that you're trying to figure out. Starting off, like while you're chiseling away at the stone, it might look like a dog when the final form is actually a cat. But things can kind of like take different forms as you're honing in on like what is the ideal shape for the market. GameTree's mission is to connect gamers. I personally thought that meant finding gamer friends, and we succeeded at that, but it wasn't sufficient for a business model, and it also wasn't sufficient to actually fulfill the full promise that we work on, which is like spending time with people, having good emotions, playing together. We discovered more problems en route. And a lot of the times, the pivots, like even though the main focus of the company has been finding gamer friends, that's still actually useful. We've learned a lot of expertise. We still have the engine that then can use that to help coordinate on-demand gameplay. And on-demand gameplay just happens to be something that the users want, and that's also a lot easier to hit the metrics, which are, like most types of social plays, growth, monetization, and retention.
I love
In
that.
the shorter term, we're going to focus retention the most
Yeah.
because for creating we want to build something that's useful. The most important thing is actually having a product that's useful. And given that this is a new direction, we're still evolving, we're still adding polish. It's one of those kinds of things that it's going to need more features than we know of right now, and we're going to keep adjusting things. And literally every single day, we're thinking of more improvements. For example, right now, the bot can prompt you when you launch a game if you want to LFG with people, and you can like turn them off for that game or snooze them. But for example, a lot of people don't have notifications on Discord, in which case, because we have a mobile app, we could send somebody a push notification. So there's all sorts of ways that it'll grow and evolve. But ultimately, the ideal pivots are still somehow related to the thing that happened before it.
Yeah, and there's also steps, right? So John's able to say, look, for the first couple of months while we do this, we're going to focus on retention because we want to see how the consumer reacts to what we're doing. But very soon after that, he's going to get to a stage with investors where he's going to say, okay, now we're going to talk about building a growth loop. Okay. And but before I get to that, like, I just want to go back to the other comment about evolving versus pivoting and Horizon 1 product versus future Horizon products. In my mind, internal product fit is the enemy to external product transformation. And so that to me is like that whole thing about we get so caught up with what our product is as entrepreneurs, all of us, me as a VC, John doing gaming, all of you people out there who are building your products, we think we've like built the rocket that's going to take the first humans to the moon. And the thing is, it's not, right? And even if it does, it's impossible, literally impossible, that that is the most transformative product that your customer could have had. But we get so stuck on it that we can't focus on that transformative external impact. That's what we need to be focused on. And if we never take our minds off that, we move to this Steve Jobs place. Like Steve Jobs didn't know anything about a marketplace for apps, which would become this monopolistic, anti-competitive gateway that kept people in like a Mad Max movie where nobody was able to escape. Like he never thought of that. He just thought of a really awesome, cool computer that didn't look like the piece of crap that was coming out of Microsoft. Like that's where his head was for the early adapters. And then what happened was his creators, his users, his buyers told him their feedback. And based on that, they did the next thing. And based on that, they did their next thing and next thing and next thing. And suddenly 25 years seems like a very short period of time where they have captured everybody making 30% on every single transaction that happens on apps, which is a terrible user experience, but they made everybody use. So what you're doing is awesome, John. And as you're evolving through and you're building out these products and listening to customers, it's great. And I love that you're focusing on retention. It's actually not the thing that's going to make the investors happy, but it's the thing you have to do as a company to make sure that you are going in the right direction. Then you can work on making the investors happy.
Yeah, so if there's a lot of retention, it means you built something valuable. And for example, on monetizing ads, subscriptions, data over time, things like that, those all help if there's a long retention cycle. But if you have a high growth rate, for example, but don't have retention, then people aren't going to want to sign up for um, subscriptions or whatnot. There's not going to be a big pool of people for instant matching, or if everybody is doing it, it's all going to be their first time experience. So the retention is a signal that the product is right. And then growth matters, but fortunately, we already solved part of that by just being the best place for gamers to match and to find friends. Again, that isn't sufficient by itself as a business model, but now retention has been like the next challenge that got unlocked because of that. And that's something that we're solving now with the bot. And then from there, happy customers pay for things. And with retention, that suddenly makes everything way easier. We have a lot of ideas based on surveys and just our own thinking that are like very clean ways to monetize this. And that's something that will also make the investors happy, but also is the ultimate bottom line of businesses that allows them to keep running and functioning.
Brilliant. Talk to me about this next question from Kushi on which is like it stands for any industry, right? But just talk to us your mind process around this.
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's something we've thought about, and Discord would be a good acquirer. There's two reasons why they wouldn't do this themselves as much. Actually, three, I guess. One is about to IPO. It seems like there's a lot of rumors, and they're going to be sitting on a lot of cash, and it's a lot easier for them to just acquire companies than to build things from scratch. Two is just being a bigger company. They're less mobile. They don't have our expertise in matching. Like I've spent over 13,000 hours in personality psychology and years running this thing. We have millions of data points about how what all your tastes and values are and how those correlate to becoming friends on Steam or on Facebook after matching in GameTree. Um, and then lastly is that because Discord's entire business model is built around tools for communities, they would be basically shooting themselves in the head if they just ripped off one of the products like completely, because that would basically be a giant red flag to like all these like tens or hundreds of thousands of people building tools that they'd be afraid to build things if Discord's just going to rip them off. So that's a last barrier.
And four, it's really
Yes, sir.
hard.
Yeah.
No, it's just hard. Like the thing
Oh,
is when you're doing something really well as a company, like Discord do what Discord do really well. Like the more you branch out trying to do lots of different things, the more difficult it is. Like go back to Apple. Look how bad Apple are at headphones. We're at headphones for years, right? And then, of course, Beats by Dre came in, and then they did a deal with Beats by Dre, and then you saw Beats by Dre in all of the Apple stores forever. Now they have their iPods and things that have come out, but that's all an accumulation of everything that had happened. The other thing, I'll give you a number five on top of what John has said. What's happening now is that everybody's waiting for companies to be worth $10 trillion. Like that's where we are. We've moved past hundreds of millions back in the day. We've moved past billions back in the day. We've moved past hundreds of billions now. We now have $5 or $6 trillion companies. We have, of course, NVIDIA, who hit $3 trillion. There are expectations, and if we're going to keep rising the stock market like we are, that means companies have got to get up to 5 or 10 trillion. The problem is, unless you acquire users along with technology, then you're not going to be able to do that. And so I think the next question is a great question because this is what links back into everything, right? As long as GameTree can build out a monetizable model that has got lots of users, great technology solving a problem, and a rising revenue, it's not even an if Discord buy. It's 100% Discord buy within the next 3 years. Like that's what this game is. So speak to us on like sequentially. I will tell you, John, and you and I have got a great relationship and have been friends for years and known each other for years. And you know me as a straight shooter. And when I'm saying stuff is like slightly off, at least in my mind, right or wrong, I'll say it to you. And when I say you're right, I think you're so on point right now. And I've never seen you so focused on the path, which is like the path to build a highly valuable company. And everything you're doing is right. Getting the new product, building it out, making it sticky, getting the retention, making sure you measure that, then working on the growth loop. Like that's how you build a highly valuable company that makes a game-changing outcome. So speak to us on this because this is the final piece, right?
Yeah, you gave me goosebumps. Yeah, I've never been more sharp and focused and feeling like really being on the right path. There is like enthusiasm and naivete of being younger and fresh and new to something, but knowing the industry deeper now, like this is really a way to solve a problem that looks very promising that nobody's been able to solve before. Monetization is though like the fundamental, again, bottom line of every business. And in gaming, people are especially sensitive to monetization. One, young gamers, which make up the majority, don't have much money. And two, they don't like things that are unfair. For example, there is freemium where you could play games for free and then you monetize them. But it's a really fine line between freemium and pay to win. And gamers hate pay to win. And because that's our target audience, it's something we have to be extremely mindful of. Right now, the app's totally free. In the past, we did have subscriptions. They worked okay. Like we got, I don't know, around 1,000 people to subscribe, but we realized that that wasn't like long-term revenue. It wasn't going to be scaling. It was too short-term of a product where people use it for a few days, they get the value out of it, they're happy, and then they don't need it anymore. Maybe they come back for a little bit later to find new friends sometimes. With a Discord bot that's helping people on demand whenever they want to play. Some people that will be every day, other people every week, but it's actually a lot better model to be able to monetize from. The way that we're going to be approaching it is keeping everything free because this sort of a thing works better when everybody can use it. The more the merrier. It's not just a moat, but actually internally it works well when you have more people that you can match from to get better matches and faster matches for more games. GameTree supports hundreds of thousands of games. So we really need to be thoughtful to not scare our users. Reputation matters quite a lot. Facebook/Meta had basically a monopoly on social, but I think that they sort of ruined it by having a lot of shady actions, sort of betraying the users. Like it's shown that the more people use Facebook, the more lonely they are, but their mission is to connect the world, which is sort of the exact opposite of what they're saying. And because of that, people don't really trust Zuckerberg, and half of Americans don't even use Facebook
No.
anymore. They feel terrible giving data or monetizing. So those are some things that we have to be very mindful of, is like, don't be like that. So we're a public benefit corporation. We have a lot more transparency and just putting more thought in towards doing well by the users, instead of just trying to build a monopoly that screws them and then also creates all these holes, a leaky bucket. We do plan to do equity crowdfunding starting soonish, so that part of the ownership of the company will actually be by the community. So it'll help spread the wealth, but also create a lot more like self-ownership, evangelism, barriers to entry with other potential things that could seek to copy this down the road. When it comes to the actual monetization, what we're doing is everything's free, but if you are a subscriber and any LFG or group that you join that's looking for more players, the algorithm will work a little bit harder and a little bit faster. For example, this is something that doesn't work if we do it for everybody, but if somebody like cares enough that they're willing to pay like $5 a month for faster LFG, then right now, for example, we'll look at like 100 matches that fit your criteria and then sort them based on how well you'd get along. But instead of 100, we could look at like 1,000, which we couldn't do for everybody because it's computationally extremely expensive. But if somebody's paying, then we can put part of the revenue towards that. And it also isn't going to like overwhelm people with more LFGs, which we can send out. So instead of inviting a couple people at a time for every available spot, maybe they get 3 or 4. Another example is sometimes you do roll with somebody that is very toxic. It just happens. Where if you could have, for example, like a super report feature where your feedback matters more. One, if you're paying, there is more recourse if you like lose an account or doing wrong things. It also shows that you care more. So if your reports, for example, have a heavier weight, then if people are playing with you, they have less incentive to like troll you or mess with you, knowing that it could get them booted off or like paused on the system for a bit. Lastly is
That's
GameTree. A lot of people use.
a little bit like what X have done to a certain extent, where you kind of verified as a serious
Yeah,
person.
yeah,
Okay.
and so and
Which,
it's
by the
like the
way,
price.
turned out to be a really good idea. Like they slaughtered him for it at the start because obviously it had been free for so many years. I also think, John, I think gaming is going to go through a stage. The thing about gamers are super interesting. I obviously have a, I also have a deep knowledge in gaming because we have an investment in now 2 esports teams, one in Latin America and one in the Americas. And we've got Rainbow Six, we've got Valorant, we've got League of Legends, we've got Counter Strike. So like I see how gamers are, and gamers, there's no gray with gamers. They love and they hate. Like that's it. If they got something that they really adore, they will love that. And if they hate something, they will shout it out. That's why NFTs have never been popular with gamers because they just hated like gamers hate. But the thing is, I do think gamers is about to go through an evolution. I think we're going to start finding gamers are going to understand that they're going to get better for paying a little bit and they're going to get used to paying a little bit. I also think advertisers are going to start understanding that actually the future of all consumption in the world is actually gamers.
Yeah, we have so much data that people give us to share, to find people, but that data can be used in different ways. For example, helping people discover the games they would like but otherwise never know about. A really clean way to monetize, for example, is if it's something that they'll find entertaining and actually be interested in, it's more like information than advertising. So if we just bump something up a few spaces that they would already potentially, it might even be the thing they would like more because the algorithm's not perfect, but to just say like, hey, this is like a promoted post, but knowing that it's something that's actually useful to them. Lastly is cosmetics is a really popular thing. A lot of people want to support the company, even if they don't get much out of it. For example, a lot of people on Discord do this with Nitro. Like the Nitro subscription, most people don't actually want the benefits that much, but they want to like support their server, or aesthetic upgrades are a really clean way to not do pay to win, where we can give
Like
users
Patreon,
really good.
like really how Patreon did it back in
Yeah.
the day, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so if you get some sort of badge on your profile that says I'm a supporter, like that's a little bit of social proof. You
Yeah.
might get the more decoration options, but also it's like social signaling as well for something good that they want to do anyways. So there's a lot of clean ways to monetize that don't mean that we have to like cancel users or make a worse experience for users.
And John, is there also like game recommendations as well?
We used to have that in the prior version. But we rebuilt the app from scratch, one just to update the design and also to handle scaling better. So
Yeah.
the current version doesn't have game recommendations, and we talked more earlier, you especially, on focus, and we're really focusing on LFG and gameplay coordination right now.
Yeah.
Player
Cool.
matching and finding people is part of that, but we even just are updating our logo now, for example, to have a logo that instantly reminds people of LFG, so that every time they see the icon in Discord or on their phone, like it
Yeah.
triggers that association
It's
before we try
cool.
to do the Apple thing to spread out.
Yeah, and it's so cool. And most gamers are not sitting there every day. I was thinking more from a monetization perspective. Most gamers are not sitting there every day thinking, "Oh man, I hope somebody comes up with a new game today." They just it's Friday night, it's 8 p.m. They want to be able to like have like 15 of their best friends just come into a place where they can hang and they can talk and they can have fun and they can like do the things that are absolutely appropriate with that group of people, right? And so it's an awesome option because you're always pulling in your favorite people and you're always then tagging in the people who are like back in the game again. So
Yeah.
I think it's killer.
By far the biggest weight when we buy something is personal recommendations. That's by far the biggest thing that people care about. And so, for example, if we're in a position where we're helping people decide who to hang out with and coordinating that, that does give a lot of opportunities to be in that space. But for the most part, the company's mission is to connect gamers. The reason people download the app is for social reasons. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that we fulfill that promise when people like think of GameTree and engage with it, that it's actually increasing their social life, not decreasing it.
Dude, it's awesome. And then last question here. I think this has been really phenomenal. And hopefully, the look, there are tactical messages and like really great questions from Ashish and Kushi and Divya and Prakash, who's just come in with the last one here. But like the tactical pieces are, I think, are very important. But I think there's a larger piece here, which John, I'm sure, would want you to take away, which is that if you're truly building something that has got a monster problem that needs to be solved, then that journey to build something truly transformative, not just solving, not just a solution, but truly transformative, that means that Friday evening at 8 p.m. is nothing like what that Friday evening would have been like before. That becomes the journey. And if you do that, it's kind of impossible to lose. It's impossible to lose because you're bringing it all the way through. But John, just incorporated inside that, really nice question here to finish up with from Prakash. This is like, dude, it's such a long journey, like, and it's so brutal. So I don't know. Can you even take one thing? You don't have to. You can take a bunch of stuff, and then I would then ask you just to finish up with just share
Yeah.
details, and Kishley would put the
Um,
details up as well
I
anyway. But
think my
also let people
connection
know what you
is
need.
bad. Am I coming through clearly?
Oh, it might be me. Was it me? Did you not hear
Oh, there we
me?
go.
Yeah. Sorry, buddy. It might have been me. So sorry. What I was going to say is, can you finish up with just giving some advice to everybody on exactly everything that's happened with you on the journey for all the
Uh,
entrepreneurs coming through?
yeah, am I coming through clearly?
Yes, you are. Is it me? It's probably me. Okay. So, hmm, yes, Kishley. John, share with us final thoughts. Baboom. Did you see your chat,
Yeah.
John?
So I guess
Just final
yeah.
thoughts,
So
John.
I guess I'll answer the question real quick. I, I think one of the important things is just not giving up. It's bad to not give up if it's something that you should give up on, but half of entrepreneurship is just sticking around and getting lucky. For example, when starting this in Ukraine, I tried fundraising from Ukraine, and that was a bad decision. And I could have given up then, but instead I just kept trying, and eventually being back in California, that became a lot easier. After COVID, it became even easier because more of the investors were used to being online, whereas before it was mostly older people who hadn't spent much time online and invested locally. So just sticking around long enough, the environment changed and we were able to be successful. Even this Discord pivot wasn't something that occurred to us for a while, and we wouldn't have done it if we hadn't tried longer at finding out what doesn't work to get to Discord. When it comes to AI, I think that like the AI itself doesn't matter too much. It's easy to work with if you have different tools. What really matters is what's the value that you're giving to the customer and what's your workflow like. For example, what became really popular were those little bubbles where you could talk to a customer support or like a chat bot that just is pre-scripted with certain responses. Those things are now easier to implement and cost less to be better. Oh, am I coming through clear?
You are perfect. Can you hear me now?
Okay, there we go. Yes,
Yeah. Thanks,
hopefully that
buddy.
recorded.
No, you got it.
Um,
It's absolutely perfect. Hey, and
yeah,
so, and then we'll cut out that little piece at the end. Everybody, you saw it, you heard it here. You can see what it's like to build a great gaming company. And there is no doubt in my mind that you're going to see John and Co. in the next 2 years, maybe 3 years on the outside in an incredibly strong position. And we with them all the way. And I love the idea on equity crowdfunding. I think it's a great idea to be able to build yourself up. Okay, my friend, thank you. You're awesome.
yeah,
You're
pleasure.
building a unicorn. Everybody, thank you for joining us as always. We appreciate you all. And Kishle, you're doing a great job producing it. And there's John's details for anybody who wants to reach out.